The Chicago Sky, even with all their injuries, have a big test today when they face the Dallas Wings. How are they going to overcome the injuries to their front court? We're going to talk about all that plus some more right after this.
Welcome to Chicago Sky Central, and here's your host, Haize.
What's going on, Sky fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Sky Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Sky and WNBA related. I'm the host here, Haize, and we got a much quicker episode, so it's not a full episode. We're not going to go around the WNBA for news or anything. We're going to focus just on the Chicago Sky and the game tonight against the Dallas Wings and why this game is going to be important to see how they overcome the injuries. But before we talk about the game, let's talk about those injuries and the changes that it's going to bring on the court for the Chicago Sky. If you watched last game against the Mystics, you will know Rebecca Gardner and Morgan Birch went down last game, and they're going to be out this game. And why that's so important is that those are two players that were key to the Chicago Sky's rotation. The Chicago Sky have been a much better defensive team with Rebecca Gardner on the court, even though they're pretty solid even without her on the court. But the impact that she has on ball movement, defense, getting turnovers has been tangible for the Chicago Sky. And that is going to be a huge player that's missed. And it seems like I bring some concern of how serious that injury is because she went down. If you saw it, it was kind of a no contact injury on top of that. And she had to be helped off the court. And because of that, it may be that she's going to miss an extended period of time. Now, when you also look at the fact that we were already missing Lee Yuru, who's going to be out for the whole season, has been announced. Isabel Harrison, our projected starting power forward, who hasn't played outside of the first preseason game for us because of having a meniscus surgery on her. So she's also missing out. And then you also look at Ruthie Hibbert being gone as well with maternity leave. So we are now sitting at just in front court injuries, 4 players, and you add Rebecca Gardner, who's played guard and forward for us in some lineups. That's a huge miss player for the Chicago Sky and an important player to the energy, the athleticism, and kind of just changing the tone and setting that tone defensively for the Chicago Sky has Rebecca Gardner been. And then when you factor in also missing Morgan Birch, who was a training camp invite, ends up making the roster, becomes our starting 4 because of Isabel Harrison going on. And Morgan Birch has been an important player contributing to both sides of the ball for the Chicago Sky, being very solid defensively for us, but also offensively just bringing some shot making, some playmaking as well. We've seen times where James Wade has even allowed her to do some playmaking and ball handling and having some things go through her, and now we're missing that player as well for the Chicago Sky. These are injuries that are not going to be easy to overcome, and expect some small ball from the Chicago Sky because of it. Now, we do still have some pretty talented forwards on this roster that can contribute. When you look at Robin Parks making the roster as another training camp invite, she brings some shooting, not really as much rebounding, but she can stretch the floor, and she's a active defensive player. Not the best on ball defensively, not anywhere close to I think either Morgan Birch or Rebecca Gardner, but can fill in and play a solid role for the Sky. And then you have Elena Smith, who in the first game of the season had 15 and 4 for the Chicago Sky coming off the bench, but it's kind of been hit or miss in the game since then. So, we have that depth, as well as when you add in Sika Kone, right, who hasn't really played for us yet, 20 years old, a center who can come in and hopefully fill some forward and center minutes for the Chicago Sky. We'll see what she can bring, 20 years old, 6'3", 180 pounds. If she can come in and provide a little bit extra depth for us as well, if she's healthy and ready to go, it can help that also. But expect a lot of small ball from the Chicago Sky. You also have Christine Anigwe, who I think has played pretty solidly for the Chicago Sky as well. But we're going to need to be forward by committee in a lot of ways for this team to really overcome the injuries they have at the forward and center position. So already coming into the season, that was one of the positions we were the thinnest at. And now, considering that we're going to be missing those players for maybe an extended period of time, let's hope that we can weather the storm. And while it hasn't been anything said or anything really rumored, I wonder if the Sky are going to do something with the roster going forward once they kind of have a more clear outline on how much time Rebecca Gardner and Morgan Birch are going to miss. And so those are players that have been really big for us. And missing them is going to be felt, I think, by the Chicago Sky. And we now have a team coming into town in the Dallas Wings that are 2-0 with wins against the Atlanta Dream and Seattle Storm so far already on this season. And you do not want to overlook the way that they have been able to play basketball and play as a team. And when you look at as well as Agumbawale. I'm sorry, mixing up names there. And what she has done. When you really look at her being a player that was at the bottom of the league as far as usage rate, has come into this season, has not only been a high volume, but a pretty solid scorer percentage-wise, owning a 55% true shooting percentage so far on the season. You do not want to overlook a 53.5 true shooting percentage so far on the season, only albeit 2 games, but they're 2-0. This is a player that has come in considering the injuries that the Dallas Wings have as well. Missing Diamond DeShields already. Lulu Lopez going to be missing at least 6 weeks as well in time. This is a team in the Dallas Wings that are still finding themselves also. And so because of that, you do not want to overlook this team. This is going to be a game where the Chicago Sky have to be locked in defensively. While we talked about how the defense has really helped the Chicago Sky in their first 2 games and winning this season, last game against the Mystics, the defense was kind of hit or miss. Now, I do still think that the Chicago Sky would have won that game had we not lost Mo and Rebecca Gardner, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? We could say all day what we could have done. At the end of the day, the defense was spotty, and it was probably one of our worst total defensive performances, even though we did have times where our defense looked really good. We just weren't able to execute down the stretch, right? As well as the offense. You look at a player like Marina Mabrey, who the Sky gave up so many first-round picks for, and in all honesty, has looked very pedestrian so far in her minutes with the Chicago Sky. Now, again, she's missed some time, came back from Italy. She still is learning this roster and these players and how to pick her spots. Our offense overall is not in the best place right now. So it's not an indictment on her skill or anything like that, but it's just being real in what we've seen so far on the court from her. It hasn't been what was advertised. It hasn't been what we've needed yet as a running mate for Kahleah Copper. And so, hopefully that starts to come around. And I do think if Marina Mabrey's shot starts falling and she starts making a bigger impact on that offensive end of the ball, our offense is going to start looking more smooth just by the nature of that. Courtney Williams, who's taking more threes, hitting them at a decent rate as well. We need to see her play a more efficient game. And Kahleah Copper, just overall, I want to see a more efficient offense, right? And so we need to see that offense be a little bit more efficient than what it's been so far in the season, even when we've gotten wins, but especially down the stretch of games, right? We need to see those players step up. Elizabeth Williams has been great and as advertised as what we needed as a rebounder, a rim protector, and somebody who is probably given more offense than I initially gave her credit for coming into the season as well. But we need to be a much more efficient offense. And then when you look at where the scoring is going to come from, right? You have Robin Parks, who's doing a pretty good job at filling in. Training camp invite a player that is really good shooting and stretching the floor. I say a pretty solid passer, but she's been kind of iffy on defense as well, especially on ball defense. You look at Elena Smith. Elena Smith, a player that I thought I was very high on. I thought she was going to come in and make a big impact for the Sky. It's been okay, right? And so we're still working out the kinks as a team, and having the amount of injuries that we do at this young part of the season is of course going to hurt that chemistry building. But we need to start getting there. We need to start becoming a more smooth offense. We're missing 4 players right now that were expected to be big parts of our rotation and probably still will be at some point in the season. Isabel Harrison, it doesn't seem like she's going to miss the full season. Ruthie Hebert is going to come back at some point. Morgan Birch and Rebecca Gardner, we still are waiting to hear updates on their status, what those injuries exactly are. I'm sure they're being checked out, stuff like that. But we need the next woman up. We need the next woman to step into that role, and be able to give the Chicago Sky solid minutes. We have to become a more efficient offense. The defense, it's going to take a little bit of a step back. When you look at how Morgan Birch, how good she's been defensively, when you look at Rebecca Gardner and what she's meant to that defensive intensity for the Chicago Sky, we're so much better of a team defensively when she's on the court. Expect the defense to take a little bit of a dip, right? And so it's up to James Wade to come up and coach a scheme to their strengths, but we need to get it rolling offensively. We have to get it rolling offensively, and it has to be more than just Kahleah Copper down the stretch. Dana Evans as well. While she's been very impactful for the Chicago Sky's defense and has hit some very clutch shot for us, right? I don't want to overlook that. Probably going to need a more consistent scoring output from her also. And Kahleah Copper, who I came into the season saying that we need to see an almost MVP level season for her, and I don't necessarily think that anymore. We're just seeing how the teams come together. But she's averaging 15.7 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and a little bit over 1.5 steals so far on this young season, only 3 games, but we need to see her maybe even shoot a little bit better of a percentage. Kahleah Copper on this season is shooting 36% from field goal range and 50% from 3. 50% from 3 isn't bad. She's taken about 2.5 of them per game so far, but that 36% from field goal percentage is not going to cut it. And I know teams are zeroing in on her more than what they ever have been before, just because she is it for the Chicago Sky's offense now. But we also are going to need, that's why I say, more efficient scoring from the Chicago Sky. We need to see that. And hopefully we can get on track against this Dallas Wings team coming into Chicago. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be that by any stretch of the imagination. The Chicago Sky have to dig in. We get a day break between this game and the next one. We play again on Tuesday against the Atlanta Dream. That's a matchup to look out for. The Dream are such a good team, and that's when we start going into that stretch that I talked about. And we're going into a difficult stretch, now projectedly missing some key players to our rotation. We face the Dream, then we have a home against the New York Liberty, then we face the Fever on the 6th, and then the Los Angeles Sparks on the 9th. And it doesn't get much easier after that. The whole month of June is literally going to be one of the toughest stretches of the season for the Chicago Sky, and how they come out of that stretch, weathering injuries to key pieces as well, could tell the story for the Sky. But that's it for me for today. Like I said, I just wanted to provide this quick update before the game today. We're about 3 hours away from game time as of recording this episode. We will have a live post-game show today, so make sure you guys are tuned in. Hit the notification bell as well to get notified when we go live. But that's my time for today. Make sure you're following the show at Chicago Sky Pod on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoSkyCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Sky and WNBA related. And we'll see you guys next time we go to Skytown. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.